Welcome into the Inside Scoop. Today's Wednesday, October 2nd. I'm your host, Josh Newberg, and we got a lot to cover on today's show. A big weekend coming up, lots of news to cover. We're going to do it, but before we do that, make sure you guys are subscribed to the On3 Recruits channel right over there. And we're the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, so jump on board and hit subscribe. And also, for those of you thinking about signing up for On3, you can use promo code BERG1. Go to on3.com, use promo code BERG1, and you can get On3 for just $1. Read everything that Steve Wiltfong, Chad Simmons, Pete Nakos have to write for just $1. That's on3.com, promo code BERG1. All right. Real quick, let's take a look at the top 20 as it stands today, heading into another big visit weekend. Ohio State on top, Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Auburn at 5. See what happens with Auburn this week. Texas at 6. Then you got Notre Dame at 10, Miami at 13. FSU is in free fall, another decommit from the Noles at 18, Gators at 20. Now, Auburn could make a big move before the next show if they're able to flip Deuce night. We'll see if we got some news coming on that. FSU, as I said, they keep free falling, and we could see another decommitment as Clemson comes to Tallahassee this weekend in prime time. Also, USC, Oklahoma, and Miami. This is where it gets interesting because they're all sitting outside the top 10. We know the Trojans, the Sooners, and the Canes all want to finish in the top 10, but that means somebody's got to fall out. Who do we think falls out? These are all burning questions that I got heading into the month of October. Let me know, comment section below, who do we think is going to finish top 10? All right, let's bring in Pete Nakos, NIL expert here at On3. Some call him Pocket Watching Pete. We just call him an expert. But Pete, we want to talk true freshmen making an impact, especially at the wide receiver position. Most notably, last weekend, we saw Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith go off. Ryan Wingo has been putting up huge numbers, all true freshmen. And yesterday on On3, you wrote that Jeremiah Smith's NIL valuation has risen to $1.4 million. Now, what was it before the start of the season, and how do you get to the $1.4 million figure?
Yeah, so Jeremiah Smith was at roughly $650,000 in July, right? Well before the start of the season, right? Yep, and now he's at 1.4, so a significant increase. He's up over $200,000 since that Michigan State game where he had a wonderful end-around touchdown and then 2 one-handed catches, which was something to take in. His social media following has also really taken off. He was at he's up over he's almost doubled his social media following since July, something that really factors into that NIL valuation.
The
brand value.
Literally look at following, right?
And if you look at what he's done, right? Okay, so in the last 2 weeks, he signed with Red Bull. He's announced partnerships with DSW and American Eagle. He has some lucrative roster value deals. And you factor that all in, and yes, his valuation continues to rise. The other thing that we need to evaluate when a valuation rises is it takes in the moment, right? Like when someone's social media following explodes, it really impacts their valuation. And with that comes, right, people are like, oh, the valuation rises. Well, not only does the valuation rise, but somebody like Jeremiah Smith is going to have a lot more brands coming his way as this football season progresses. Yeah. And the other thing that's going to happen too, Josh, is there's going to be an end of the season. And when the end of the season hits, what happens? New contracts are signed. So all of that is factored in.
Because it's essentially free agency at the end of every season right now.
Unless there's a multi-year contract, yes.
And how often do we see multi-year contracts? I hear behind the scenes it's more one-year deals. Let's talk next year.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people even have monthly deals that roll over. The multi-year deals are a rarity. And they really happen a lot at the quarterback position when a program feels really good about a program builder.
All right. Speaking of getting paid, let's talk Prize Picks. Prize Picks is great. You pick 2 or more players, then select more or less than on their stat line. Now, Travis Hunter, he's been the big winner for me this year on more than one occasion. This week, though, I'm going Cam Ward, Miami quarterback, more than 298. Now, I think he's going to go over 300 in this game, but I'm taking the more than. Now, I'll probably pair that up with the Jeremiah Smith TD pick. Boom. That's how I hit. That's how I make money. What about you? Prize Picks. It's easy. It's fun. It's a great way to play daily fantasy while you watch your favorite college football team. Let me know who you guys got in your lineup. I need some winners. Let me know Prize Picks. It is the most fun way to make a little money during the football season. So here's what we're going to do. Go to prizepicks.com/inside scoop. Use promo code inside scoop and receive a guaranteed $50 when you play 5. That's promo code inside scoop. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Go check out Prize Picks. All right. Now, Ryan Williams, he was another star wide receiver. He had a huge performance against Georgia on national television. The whole world, literally at least the sports world, is buzzing about 17-year-old Ryan Williams, what he did against Georgia. So does he see an increase in his NIL value after just a game like that?
Yeah, so let's break it down. He's added over 160,000 social media followers.
Matters.
I mean, to put that into perspective, that is one of the largest spikes that we've seen in the NIL era, and that's comparing it to Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders after that TCU game a year ago. And then you look at his valuation. His valuation is now at $1.5 million. It was at roughly $765,000 a week ago. To just show you just how much it's taken off following that Georgia performance. And you know, someone like Ryan Williams, he's a freshman just like Jeremiah Smith. He's playing for one of the biggest brands in college football. He made the biggest play of the biggest game of maybe we'll see in the entire season. That is really hard to quantify, okay? And the other thing you need to consider, too, about someone like Ryan Williams, right? Serena Williams talked about him on Twitter. That has almost like 18 million views. A Sports Center tweet has almost like 5 to 10 million. Like, those types of impressions are invaluable when you're trying to talk about establishing an NIL brand.
Yeah, because a brand is going to want to connect with those engagement and those follower numbers. So when we're talking followers, like Ryan Williams increases following, does he go out and tweet, or are these just people just randomly just pulling up, searching his name on Instagram and hitting follow?
So a lot of that is Instagram. You see a lot of these follower spikes on Instagram, and what it is, you know, reels and posts and things like this these days. But the one thing that Ryan Williams has done extremely well is he loves to collab with people. So like when SportsCenter is like collab, Alabama football, OT7, things like that, he immediately accepts the collab, and then all of a sudden his profile is on more and more people's Instagram feeds.
Okay. He knows how to work it. All right, so does this impact that we're seeing with the true freshman wide receivers this year? I mean, you know, there are other true freshmen, but it seems like the wide receivers this year are kind of popping off the page. So does the impact in success that they're having correlate to what we're seeing in the 2025 recruiting cycle at the wide receiver position?
So a couple things. Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith are two of the best wide receivers we'll ever see in the modern recruiting era. They are in this NIL social media era where their on-field value is almost second to none, but they also have these major brands. That's what makes them very valuable, and that's why their valuations are over $1.4 million. But when it comes to recruiting too, if you look at it, Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams both had really interesting recruitments.
Yeah.
They also, everybody knew they were good, right? It was never a question of how's this going to pan out. No, it was like these guys are going to be instant superstars, and because of that, they got some really lucrative NIL packages. And what has that meant on this year's recruiting class, Josh? It means that the average value of an elite wide receiver has significantly spiked in the last 2 years because of the impact that Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams have made when it comes to recruiting elite wide receivers.
So we're talking Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams and Ryan Wingo and some of these other, what they're doing on the field this year is having an impact on guys like DeCorian Moore, Khalil Lockett, Jamie French, etc.
But it really also goes back, right? Jeremiah Smith, his national signing day last year, he pulled the Ohio State hat out of the backpack, but then it took him 8 hours to sign his national.
What do you think was going on during that 8 hours, Pete?
There were some final negotiations on NIL contracts going down. Ryan Williams reopened his recruitment. He settles on Alabama. I'm sure he had a moment during that period, though, to really think about who's offering the most dollars. Ryan Wingo, it's no surprise here on this recruiting show. Texas has one of the most aggressive NIL collectives in the country. That's not a secret. So you look at those three, how elite they are, where they went, and also the dollars they can command, and what happened during their recruitment. you can tie the exact correlation of what this recruiting cycle has looked like at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, and for those teams, I mean, these wide receivers have been priceless, really, to the performance and the output that they're giving as soon as they step on campus. So, if you are recruiting a Jamie French or one of these high-end wide receivers like a DeCorian Moore, Khaleke Lockett, you probably got to be on the defensive all the way until they enroll on campus. Yeah. Because like you said, even though, Jeremiah Smith put the hat on in the ceremony, he still spent the next 8 hours fielding calls from other programs.
I mean, and you think about it too when we say priceless, like what happens in that Alabama-Georgia game if Ryan Williams isn't there to make some spectacular catches and moves? And what are we talking about at Ohio State right now with Will Howard in the wide receiver room if Jeremiah Smith doesn't seamlessly go in there and start on day one?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right, you guys, let us know how we feeling about these NIL valuations. I mean, if you're an Alabama fan, you're probably feeling like, hey, we got a deal on Ryan Williams. But let us know if you're a Texas fan, wherever you're a fan of Ohio State, let us know, comment section below. Let's talk some Nebraska recruiting. How has the Huskers youth movement on the field impacted high school recruiting? We're going to find out. I got Sean Callahan from Husker Online on this video, and we're going to talk about some recruiting as Nebraska is off to a hot 4-1 start. But first, Nebraska fans, do me a favor right now. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We're here talking Nebraska recruiting all season long, so jump on board and hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in the great Sean Callahan. Now, Sean, I said it. Nebraska, they're proving if you're young and talented, you can go there and play early. We've seen Raiola, we've seen Barney, we've seen Nelson. There's some guys on defense making an impact. So has any of this kind of bled over to recruiting? Are you hearing anything from some of the targets that they're on about how this early success is impacting their recruitments?
Maybe not so much on the 2025 end, because I feel like a lot of teams everywhere, you're virtually not done, but you're kind of done.
Hayes in the barn.
And so I think for 26, that's where the real hook is. And Nebraska's been able to get so many of the top regional 26 guys on campus. They were blessed to have the 3 night games in a row, which makes it easy. And then even this weekend, they're going to get a 3:00 kick. So anybody within, a good driving distance can make kickoff, or they could fly in and have time to make the game. So they've been blessed with their kickoff times. What they don't like are those 11 a.m. games here, because it's really hard to get kids in to make those kickoffs. So they've had a great opportunity to sell what they're going to be, show what some of these freshmen have been able to do. And obviously Dylan Raiola, I mean, he sells Nebraska right now as well as anybody.
Yeah, no doubt. He is a walking billboard for Nebraska recruiting right now. So that being said, a 3 p.m. kick in Lincoln, Big Ten battle as Rutgers comes to town. Sean, who are some important names coming in this weekend on recruiting visits?
Well, I think the big one is Corey Sims. He's committed to USC. He will be coming in for a visit. He's out of St. Louis, a 4-star wide receiver. So I do think that's big. Bryce Perry Wright, a defensive lineman, a 4-star, 2026 from Buford, Georgia, will be coming in here to Nebraska. Caden Snyder, one of the top players in the state of Kansas for 2026, a 4-star as well. Roman Voss out of Minnesota, Jackson County High School in Jackson, Minnesota. Those are, guys to watch. Voss and Snyder don't have Husker offers yet, so it would not surprise me with them coming now for the home game if they left Lincoln with offers.
All right, let's wrap this Nebraska segment up with some flip talk. Isaiah Mosey, he was the most recent wide receiver that Nebraska was able to flip from Oregon. So I wanted to just poke around, right? FSU, they're having a real rough go of it. They have the number 2 ranked player in the state of Nebraska, Chase Lofton, committed to them. So are you hearing anything on the recruiting trail right now about Lofton, or just any flips in general when it comes to Nebraska?
It's still been really quiet with Chase Lofton. And look, tight end, it's such that position produces more recruits in this area than any other position. So it hurt to lose Chase Lofton, but there's Isaac Jensen for the next year. That's actually Chase Lofton's teammate. So there's nothing that I can tell you is there right now. And as you know, Josh, that can always change quickly.
In a heartbeat.
How the contact and things re-engage. But, the Corey Sims visit does get your attention. A local St. Louis player making his way to visit Lincoln here this weekend. I do think that is one to watch. the transfer portal stuff too. It's still early, but I do think Nebraska, they're going to be in the market for some guys when the season ends. They're going to need some offensive line help in some key areas. And there are some other areas, obviously, in the portal when the year ends that will be needs to kind of top off this team heading into next year. But, I think they're in pretty good shape. The Lofton thing, though, just hasn't really materialized right now.
No, maybe they're just slow playing it because, hey, they know he's the home state kid. Florida State still struggling, but we'll see. All right. This weekend, though, it's Rutgers at home. Nebraska fans, talk to Sean and I. How are you feeling about this game and recruiting? Let us know. Comment section below. Sean Callahan, Husker Online. You guys are going to be busy all weekend. Go check it out. Appreciate you dropping by the Inside Scoop today.
Thanks, Josh.
Let's talk Georgia recruiting. A big-name prospect started trending in the Dogs' direction today. And I got Rusty Mansell on to talk about these latest developments. Also, Georgia is back in Athens this weekend. They face Auburn. Big recruiting weekend on deck. We're going to break it all down. But first, UGA fans, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We're talking UGA recruiting all season long. So jump on board right now. Hit subscribe for me, please. All right. Let's bring on Rusty Mansell, Dogs HQ. And we're going to start with Usman Kroma, the running back. He started trending in Georgia's direction. The great Chad Simmons put a pick in. A couple of others are rolling in. So as we're 2 or 3 days away, we know Florida State's involved. We know Tennessee, Auburn. But what are you hearing about the Dogs right now?
Listen, he came up for Tennessee Tech weekend and, spent some time with Kirby Smart. It was one of those visits where it's not the big game, Tennessee Tech, so to speak, but coming up and spending some time with Kirby Smart on a game day. I was told Kirby Smart spent about 45 minutes with him and kind of reiterated, listen, you're a major target for us. Running back coach Josh Crawford is a former Lee County High School assistant coach who's now the running back coach at Georgia. A couple of stops later, a lot of connection there for Kroma. And, what I've written on Dogs HQ the last couple of weeks, I felt like Georgia was trending there. Mm-hmm. And today as well, I don't do the prediction type thing. I try to give you the pulse of where I'm at right now. Right. And as we video this, I feel like Georgia's in a good spot going into this decision this weekend.
Yeah, so take me behind the scenes because we've had Steve Wiltfong on this channel a lot. Kind of talk about Kroma's recruitment in terms of these are the teams, but if Georgia presses the gas on this recruitment, they're going to land them. So what kind of change? Was it that meeting? Was that kind of the turning point with Kirby where they said, hey, you are our, we want you. And since then, have the Dogs just picked up traction? Georgia and Auburn fans in Athens this weekend, listen up. Whether you're cheering on the Tigers or the Dogs on October 5, plan on a pit stop at the Whataburger food truck during your tailgate. Get ready to watch your team by securing an easy dub first with a hot, fresh Whataburger, that is. And no matter who comes out on top, when you take your team to Whataburger, you know you're going to feel like a winner by getting your food made the way you want it, fresh and hot every time, 24/7. I love the burgers, but I got to be honest, I'm more of a breakfast Whataburger guy. You bring me in there at 2 a.m., I'm either getting a taquito, bacon, potato, but I'm definitely getting a breakfast on a bun. I call it a bob. You can call it whatever you want. It'll get you right. Anyway, let me know. Are you guys more breakfast or burgers at Whataburger? Comment section below. I will see you at the game and see you at Whataburger.
Josh, you've been doing it as long as I have. My experience, when you meet with someone for like 45 minutes on a game day, there's questions on both sides. And I would imagine Kroma got those questions answered. Feels good about it. Obviously, the connection with Josh Crawford, that's big. He's got Lee County connections, and this thing's went a lot of different ways, man. At one point, I thought he was going to Florida State, and then probably a month and a half ago, I thought he was leaning toward Auburn. In fact, Steve Wiltfong and Chad Simmons, are the two best in the business, made predictions on 3 that he was going to go to Auburn. But I kind of felt like Georgia was still in this thing, and when that meeting took place a couple of Saturdays ago, I felt like since then, everything I've heard behind the scenes is that this young man is going to end up at Georgia, and that's kind of where I am as of today going into that decision on Saturday. I think this guy's going to join the 2025 class at Georgia. And here's what I love about him, man. Everybody he plays, I talk to those guys, and they're like, Rusty, this guy in the fourth quarter is as good as anybody we've ever faced. It's a 215, 220-pound back that can run, and this will be a big get for Georgia.
Yeah, he's a different size back than what Georgia currently has, so he's a good fit. All right. In the next chapter of Georgia leaving no stone unturned, remember they were recruiting those Rutgers guys that they liked a whole lot. Now there's a Boston College defensive line commit named
Mm-hmm.
Josiah Victory. It seems like he's rising up UGA's board. Is he in a similar spot? Because we've talked about Joseph Mbachu as well. Is Josiah Victory in kind of a similar spot?
You look at him, and I'll give you another name you just mentioned about talking about Rutgers, Braxton Kyle, young man at North Gwinnett, expecting him on campus this weekend.
Okay.
That's a defensive lineman that Georgia's recruiting. This is what I think, Josh. The in-state kids are becoming so much more valuable, I think, to Georgia because these young men are, they kind of want to go to Georgia. You want the opportunity to go to Georgia. Maybe the thought process is these kids come here, they're going to take their time to develop. And I think people write off seniors too much. You can play yourself into a recruiting chart, and you can play yourself up a recruiting chart. And I think both of those young men at Grayson have done that. And I think when Georgia worked them out this summer, Georgia got a chance to see them, and they have followed up not only an impressive spring and summer, they've had a great fall for Grayson. And when you start talking about in-state defensive linemen, they become that much more of a priority.
Speaking of in-state defensive linemen, let's play a little hypothetical. Let's say Georgia lands Justice Terry and Elijah Griffin. Just hypothetically, just walk with me here. How many more defensive linemen do you think Georgia can take after that?
Well, there's a lot of questions. We could get real deep here because I don't know if Georgia's going to be at 105 scholarship. Are they going to do away with walk-ons? Does that mean Georgia's going to add 20 more players? The answer is not there yet on that. I've called everyone. What I'm saying? Yeah. If you start talking about this thing is going to be 105 and Georgia could potentially have 20 more spots, I guarantee you Kirby Smart's going to take more defensive linemen. I mean, there's no question. Those are the guys that separate you in the SEC. So you think that some of those spots are going to be defensive linemen if Georgia can land those guys. So if they hypothetically land Elijah Griffin and Justice Terry, I still think they would take one more, even with Shivers and the young man from California. I don't want to butcher his name. The young man from Germany decided in California is verbally committed as well. And you got Stephon Shivers, young man out of Middle Tennessee, committed to them. So that would put Georgia at 4. If they get those 4 in the boat, I certainly see Georgia taking a minimum of 5. But very quickly, Josh, this thing could get about 6 or 7 if that rule, in fact, does move forward.
Yeah. All right. So there is some room for even a couple more after Terry Griffin. That's interesting. All right. So this weekend, Georgia returns home to Athens, only their second home game of the season. It's early, but how's the visit list shaping up for this Auburn game?
Yeah, you look and obviously people want to know about 2025s, and Justice Terry, we've confirmed he's going to be there. There's also Steve Wolfong and Chad Simmons both confirmed. Jackson Cantwell, the 5-star offensive lineman in the 2026 class, a pair of top tight ends in Caden Prothro and Xavier Tiller out of Langston Hughes. Caden Prothro, a 6'6" kid out of Bowden. As we move forward into these 2026s and they become what I call front page news, you're going to know about these guys. And Jared Curtis, who many think is the number one quarterback in the country from 2026, he's verbally committed to Georgia. He'll be on campus. So a lot of 2026s, which are big deals, because most of the hay is in the barn on the 25 class. There'll be some guys there that, the Braxton Kyle's uncommitted, Mbachu, you'll see if those guys show up this weekend, which I'm anticipating, but Justice Terry will probably be the headliner. Obviously, the name you get the text on, and Josh, you'll probably get the same text. Is C.J. Wiley going to be in Athens this weekend, the Florida State commit out of Milton High School, who Georgia stays in contact with? I've said that. But the next thing with C.J. Wiley is going to be follow the visits. Does he show up in one of these next 2 weekends in Athens with Auburn and Mississippi State games? That's what you're going to watch this weekend, and we may not know until he's either in those stands or he's not in those stands.
Yeah, Florida State putting up a fight. He was back in Tallahassee last weekend, so we'll see what happens here. But this weekend, it's all about Uzma and Chroma making that decision on Saturday. Will it be Auburn? Will it be Georgia? You guys let us know. Comment section below. Big visit weekend ahead. Go check out Dogs HQ. Thank you, Rusty, for joining the Inside Scoop.
Appreciate it, Josh.
Let's talk Auburn recruiting, and is confidence increasing after quarterback Deuce Knight took his official visit to the Plains over the weekend? Could the Notre Dame commit be close to finally flipping that commitment? We're going to get to the bottom of it in this video. I got Auburn insider Jeffrey Lee. He's got the latest intel on Knight. But first, Auburn fans, do me a favor and hit subscribe to the On3 Recruit page. We love talking Auburn recruiting on this channel, so jump on board and hit subscribe for me, please. All right, let's bring in the great Jeffrey Lee, Auburn Live. Now, You just posted a note on Deuce Night today on Auburn Live. What are you hearing about the Notre Dame quarterback as he leaves his official visit to Auburn?
Some positive buzz, Josh, around Deuce Night and Auburn for the first time in it seems like a while. Even though he's been on campus 4 of the first 5 home games,
right?
You never really heard much coming from those visits, and at one point we all thought it was going to be an early season flip. That didn't happen. He kept coming back. He kept coming back, and then after this official visit, it was almost like Auburn was like, "Okay, we get the point. Either you're going to have to get in this boat, or we're going to be looking elsewhere. We're going to not just be looking elsewhere and talking to others, but we're going to start making moves. We're going to start pushing for others." And I don't know if that made a difference, or maybe Deuce was just, got what he needed from the official visit. But it seems like as of Tuesday morning, wrong day. As of Tuesday morning, things seem to be swinging back towards Auburn. I've heard a lot of positive conversations over the last 15 or so hours, and those are all positive for Auburn with Deuce Night.
So what happened? Was it a conversation? Was it what he saw in the field? Was it a feeling? Like, what happened this weekend to, like you said, kind of turn the tide in this recruitment back to Auburn?
I don't know if there was anything specific that happened. I think it was a culmination of all these visits, the relationships that he's been building, being able to see Auburn, even though they lost against Oklahoma. You saw Peyton Thorne have his best game of the year.
Mm-hmm.
You could sell to him, early playing time, obviously, but just a few pieces that they're missing this season, and as well as all the freshmen and sophomore in the recruiting class that they have in the 2025 cycle. A bright future is what you're selling, and to have that and be able to pitch that to Deuce Night for the past 5 weekends, advantageous for Auburn. But I also think that maybe, Juju Lewis coming back into the fold, maybe that was some leverage Auburn had with him that was like, hey, he wants in. We want it to be you, but if you're not coming, that's fine. We need to go here. So I don't know if it was the leverage or just a culmination of everything, Josh, but it seems to be there's some momentum, there's some steam building here. Maybe the finish line is in sight after all.
Yeah. So real quick, just to wrap the Deuce Night talk up. So here we are sitting midweek. Everything you said is great, but he still hasn't committed yet. And you said they went back and kicked the tires again, opened the lines of communication with Julian Lewis. We know that they've talked to Luke Nickel as well. So what's Auburn's next move with Deuce?
I would say they're going to give him another 3 to 4 days. I think they want to know something. They want some finality in this and some closure to this quarterback recruiting. They want to get him on board, and because a lot of other guys are kind of keeping an eye on him to see what he does.
All right. Another recruitment that is coming to a closure real quick is going to be Usman Kroma, the running back. He is deciding this Saturday, announcing it's Auburn and Georgia primarily, but we know Tennessee and Florida State are probably just hats on the table at this point. So what are you hearing as we're a couple days out from this decision?
A lot of back and forth. I'm with you. Auburn, Georgia, Florida State just got Byron Lewis, so I don't expect them to be much of a factor in his recruitment. I think it's been Auburn, Georgia for a while now, even though he went back to Florida State. But I think on Saturday it's going to be one of the two. A lot of early buzz about Auburn. Georgia making a move here late, and like I told you before, Josh, it's very difficult for any school, any college to go into Georgia, get a top recruit that Georgia really wants, and I don't think Usman Kroma is any different. So I don't know that he's made a final decision. We've talked to some sources close to his recruitment. He hasn't come out and said, hey, man, I'm going to pick, so-and-so on Saturday. Don't tell anybody. I don't think that's the case. I think he's still mulling it over, but it's hard not to default to the in-state program when it's Georgia and they want a kid.
Do we know if he plans on being at the Georgia game this weekend?
That I do not know. It would be fitting if he did pick Georgia, though.
Yeah, I would say so. So, I was just trying to see if he was tipping his hand or anything there, but we'll see. So, what will Auburn do? Because they have a great back in the fold already in Alvin Henderson. What does Auburn need at the running back position if Kroma does go in the other direction?
Well, they would have taken 2 in this class if they could have been Alvin Henderson in a Shekai Mills Knight, Alvin Henderson and Usman Chroma, something like that, A.K. Deer. But if Usman Chroma chooses Georgia on Saturday, obviously they're going to continue to recruit him. They're going to continue to recruit Mills Knight. But at the end, I don't see them taking just anyone. Now, if those scholarship numbers come back from the NCAA as the scholarship limit goes to 105, I could see them maybe dipping down, taking what they would consider a developmental guy, a guy that they don't expect to come in and make noise early, but maybe after 2 or 3 years. I could see that, but I could also see Auburn signing Alvin Henderson and then go into the transfer portal in the offseason.
All right, Auburn fans, talk to us right now. There is a thread on the Auburn Live message board right now, the corner. There's a debate happening. Am I too negative? The title of the thread is Josh Newberg. Am I too negative in my coverage of the Auburn Tigers recruiting? Now, here's what I'll say. I cover the ups and downs, Jeff, on this show, the inside scoop, where it's like a roller coaster, because recruiting is a roller coaster of emotion. So if you remember back to August, which kind of seems like a long time ago, but I was the one saying that Auburn was the hottest team on the recruiting trail. They won the month of August, and they were taking that right into the season. Now, of course, there's been some ups and downs during the season, more downs than ups, and we cover that here on the Inside Scoop, but I don't think that makes me negative in my coverage of Auburn. Do you, Jeff?
Absolutely not, man. I went on there and defended you, Josh. I think you've been fantastic. You've heaped the praise when they deserved it, and you've asked the tough questions when it deserved to be asked.
And look, just because, they're in a little bit of a lull right now in recruiting doesn't mean next month we're not going to be heaping praise back on Hugh Freeze and their staff when they start landing guys. And we know they're going to turn it back up because flip season, that's where Hugh Freeze thrives. So, maybe it's a little down now, but hey, if you follow recruiting, you got to take the ups with the downs. That's why we get so excited when the highs are high, because the lows are so low. So if you feel like I'm being negative, hey, we're just telling the story of what's happening right now. And at some point they're going to turn it around, and we'll hey, maybe this weekend they land Chroma. But hey, what do you think, Jeff? Comment section below. You guys let us know. Am I too negative in my coverage of Auburn? All right, Jeff, thanks for dropping by the Inside Scoop today.
Absolutely, Josh. Thank you.
Let's talk some Ohio State recruiting as the Buckeyes are back in Columbus this weekend to face Iowa. It's the first real test of the season. Should be a good one, and recruits will be in town. I got Matt Parker from Letterman Row on to break this weekend down. But first, we got to do something. We got to hit subscribe to the On3 Recruit channel, the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. So jump on board, hit subscribe. All right, let's bring on Matt Parker from Letterman Row. So Matt, big visit weekend as Iowa comes to town. How does Ryan Day handle these big visit weekends? Is he hands-on, or on game day, does he kind of delegate that to the recruiting department and they lead the way?
I think it's a little bit of column A, column B. I mean, you see him during pregame, he'll interact with a lot of the commits, obviously, because, their families are in town. They're going to be on campus in a few short months now. I mean, today's October 1st. Signing day is going to be here before we know it, and then they'll be on campus. And a lot of those big time guys, those big targets that are visiting, you'll see Day interact with those guys in the stadium. But it's all of the things he does away from the stadium, not during the game or things like that, because they have these guys go to the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, Ohio State's football facility. They'll try and sit in a meeting or two if they can, depending on when, a prospect shows up. Anytime a kid that visits Ohio State that doesn't have an offer, and on Sundays, we see them post an offer, that offer comes after talking with Ryan Day in his office, usually, Sunday morning, early Sunday afternoon, before Ohio State gets into its film session of the game before, on Saturday. So he's certainly hands-on, but just in certain areas. And I think the big thing is this is the first big visit weekend at Ohio State this 2024 season.
Right.
And, Day has removed himself from calling plays. So one of the things Saturday that I'm really, really looking forward to watch, just how does he interact, and how are things different for him during this big visit weekend? Because he obviously knows what's going on. He's the head ball coach at Ohio State. He knows who's going to be there and who isn't and stuff like that. But you have to give credit where credit's due. The job that Mark Pantoni does, Ohio State's general manager, he runs quite a show. So
a tight ship
uh,
over there under Mark D'Antoni.
absolutely. But there are certainly moments throughout the weekend where Ryan Day is very, very involved.
All right. Well, let's get to the recruits. Who are the most important targets that'll be on campus this weekend?
There's a few of them, Josh, and I want to start off with, and I think we were going to talk about this guy a little bit later on, but I'm going to jump the gun a little bit here. And I want to talk about 2027 quarterback Brady Edmonds out of Huntington Beach, California. Josh, this guy is the real deal for Ohio State. I mean, we've seen so many RPMs are already placed in the system on a 2027, but I think we take away quarterback. We take quarterback a little bit differently when we're talking about recruits, just because we see that quarterback position commit so early, so much earlier than in years past. And originally, a few months back, we were expecting Edmonds to visit for the Nebraska game on October 26th. That since changed within the last, 6-7 weeks or so. He's going to be on campus this weekend for the Iowa game. And then on Monday, I believe it was, On3's Chad Simmons reported that, Edmonds' timeline is moving, and it's moving up. He's not pushing any kind of decision back or anything like that. And for me, just sitting here, reading Chad's report, talking with people at Ohio State, things like that, it's really hard for me to not envision Brady Edmonds being committed to Ohio State by the end of this football season, maybe even by the end of this regular season, before November 30th. I think there are some conversations that still need to happen between Edmonds and his family with Ohio State, maybe with some other places, but the hype and the juice behind, Edmonds to Ohio State is really, really, really starting to pick up. And I'm very intrigued to see how his visit in Columbus goes this weekend.
All right. Now, one name I did not see on the visit list is Naeem Offord, the corner from Alabama, who's been committed now for months, but not on the list. So when do we expect him back in Columbus?
And we expected him for this weekend, for the Iowa game, but it's just not working out. The next available opportunity is October 26th for that Nebraska game. And really and truly, it's just, will he show up? It is a point of, will he show up? And there's not much to say other than that, quite honestly. I think if he doesn't show up for that Nebraska game, don't expect him on campus until for the, I guess the Michigan game when push comes to shove, because you think about the rest of that home slate after Nebraska, it's Purdue and Indiana and then Michigan. And if you were committed to Ohio State and you were a big five-star plus prospect, which of those games would you want to go to, right? So if it's not going to be Nebraska, and we don't see him for Michigan, I think that's kind of telling. But there's a lot of time before any of those things happen. So we just stay and wait and see. I mean, that's what you and I have talked about over these last few months now with Naeem Offord, the 5-star plus cornerback out of Parker High School. It's just wait and see, and we'll see what happens.
Follow the visits or the lack thereof. They both tell a story. All right. So when we talk about who could be Ohio State's next commitment, do you think it could be Brady Edmonds? I mean, I know he's in the 2027 cycle, but with 2025 kind of slowing down, how it gets towards the end, November, December, it heats back up. So could this 2027 prospect, Brady Edmonds, be the next big commitment for Ohio State?
It would not shock me whatsoever if Brady Edmonds was the next, just in general, Ohio State commitment. That 2026 cycle continues to just interest me. It's very interesting, Ohio State's approach to this 2026 cycle. There have been numerous in-state guys in that 2026 cycle that have visited. Guys like Elbert Hill, the number one cornerback in the country, plays in Akron out of Archbishop Hoban. You've had guys like Sam Greer from the same school as Elbert Hill. Max Riley is going to visit for the Nebraska game. Will Conroy is making a much overdue visit to Ohio State this weekend for the Iowa game. That's big time for the Buckeyes. Another guy like Jacob Weatherspoon, defensive back out of Avon up in Northeast Ohio. So there have been a lot of, these on 300 guys that are in the 2026 cycle that have visited already this season. but just aren't quite there yet. They aren't quite there yet. I think a guy like Brady Edmonds, it makes sense if he's ready, if he feels ready. Ohio State is ready to take that commitment. You look at that 2026 quarterback picture, which Ohio State is, still evaluating guys. I mean, just about every single guy that they've offered, I think there's 12 of them in the 2026 cycle. 11 of those 12 are committed elsewhere already. So you have Tavian St. Clair in 2025. 26 is a question mark. If you have the opportunity to jumpstart 27 by getting one of the best quarterbacks in that cycle already,
Yeah.
I say go do it. And
Yeah,
I
why
think
not?
I
And
wouldn't be
Brady
shocked.
Edmonds is already 6'5", 205 pounds as a 2027 prospect, number 2 rated quarterback, number 17 overall in that class. So that would be a major addition, even though it's a couple years out. But hey, like you said, that's just how it goes right now. And if you are a top QB and you might know where you want to go, you better get that spot filled because there's not a lot left. So we'll see what happens with Brady Edmonds. But yeah, going to be watching him. Do you have him on commit watch this weekend, or it could be down the road?
I would say down the road, Josh. This is his first visit to Ohio State since he camped in June. I mean, he's very impressive. We got eyes on him there. He was very impressive. And I think there might be some more game day visits down the line for him, this season to other places. I mean, I would encourage that if I was Ohio State, be like, hey, go check out places. Make sure that this is where you want to be if this is ultimately what you're thinking. But I wouldn't expect it this weekend. But certainly I would expect it before the end of this regular season.
All right, Buckeye fans, talk to us. How you feeling about this coming weekend? Iowa's coming in town. Give us your predictions. Comment section below.